If you lost everything that gave your life direction, where would you begin again?
Wow. I mean, that's the ultimate question, isn't it? The kind that just forces you to stare blankly at the ceiling at 2 in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a question that, almost everyone is going to face at some point, a really catastrophic reset. We're talking about like a 10-year relationship just ending in an afternoon, or a career setback that wipes out a decade of grinding,
Right.
or a failed dream, or really just any unexpected life change that completely pulls the rug out from under you.
Yeah, it's that terrifying moment where the map you've been using, to navigate your daily existence suddenly just does not match the territory outside your window anymore. It's totally alien.
So that is our mission for today's deep dive. We are exploring how people actually rebuild their lives after losing their path. And the source material we're using to answer this is, well, it's incredibly unique.
It really is.
We're looking at a highly analytical breakdown of a Japanese light novel and anime series called Mushoku Tensei. Specifically, we're focusing on Chapter 7, which is often referred to as the mid-level adventurer arc.
And for anyone who is unfamiliar with the series, don't worry, we are not just doing a fantasy plot summary today.
No, definitely not.
The breakdown provided in our sources uses the protagonist, a character named Rudius, as a kind of psychological case study. Because in this specific chapter, he suffers this devastating emotional separation and falls into a really profound depression.
Right.
He actually earns the rather bleak moniker Quagmire, which literally translates to like a swamp or deep mud.
Right, and those sources extract some incredibly pragmatic, modern lessons from this quagmire period. We're looking at the survival tactics of mental management, resilience, and really the gritty reality of rebuilding yourself from absolute zero.
Yeah. And, to understand the mechanics of rebuilding, we first really have to understand what actually shatters during a major loss, because the sources highlight a critical observation here.
Which is?
It's rarely just the external thing that breaks. Like, it's not just the job, the partner, or the status. The real casualty is your fundamental sense of identity.
Oh man, yeah, it's that spiraling thought process, right? Like, if I'm not this person's partner, or if I'm not the vice president of this company, then who am I?
Exactly.
What is my actual personality without this massive external anchor?
Right. And the source material illustrates this psychological breakthrough, a really brilliant sociolinguistic detail. Because in Japanese, speakers use different first-person pronouns depending on, their confidence, their status, and their relationship to whoever they're talking to.
Okay, right.
So after his trauma, the protagonist intentionally adopts the pronoun boku. And it's very boyish, polite, agreeable, and just entirely harmless.
Harmless, yeah.
He essentially puts on this mask of being the perfect, helpful honors student to completely camouflage his inner devastation.
That is so fascinating. It reminds me of people in the real world who go through a brutal personal tragedy, like, say, a divorce, and suddenly at work, they become these hyper-agreeable robots.
Yes, absolutely.
They use intense corporate speak and perfect professionalism just to mask their severe emotional burnout.
That is a perfect real-world equivalent. When people lose their life's anchor, they very often construct a fake, frictionless persona just to survive basic social interactions.
You smile at the barista, you say, "I'm fine," on the Zoom meeting.
Exactly. But the danger of faking it, according to the source, is that maintaining this incredibly polite mask requires massive amounts of psychological energy. So it slowly hollows out your true emotional core.
Okay, but let me push back on that framework a little bit, or at least play devil's advocate here.
Sure, go for it.
Does a massive loss actually turn you into a fake version of yourself?
Hmm.
Or does a catastrophic loss simply strip away all the ego and the noise and reveal who you truly were all along? Like, is that polite, terrified mask actually the real you, laid bare?
Oh, that's a great question. And the source text actually tackles that exact debate. They introduce a character named Soldat.
Okay.
And he's this abrasive, highly perceptive mentor figure who basically corners the protagonist and demands he stop lying to himself and the world.
Wow. Yeah.
And through their interactions, the breakdown argues that loss initially obscures who you are. It does not reveal your true self. It reveals your terror.
Oh.
Because you are so terrified of further vulnerability, you deploy that agreeable mask as a temporary defense mechanism. It's psychological armor.
So the genuine version of you is basically trapped behind the trauma response.
Right. You have to actively carve out a safe space. You have to find the right environment or a specific group of people where the stakes are low enough that you can slowly unbuckle that armor.
Take off the mask.
Exactly.
There.
Take it off and safely figure out what parts of your original personality actually survived the crash.
But the tension there is that, the mask feels so suffocating. And the uncertainty of the future is so scary that our default human instinct is to just try and sprint backward.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
We just sit around desperately waiting for things to go back to normal.
The nostalgia trap. It keeps people paralyzed for years.
It really does. Waiting for your old life to return is it's like trying to put a shattered windshield back together piece by piece so you can keep driving.
That's a great way to put it.
You're bleeding, you cannot see the road in front of you.
Yeah.
And you're just refusing to accept the reality that the car is totaled and you just need to get out and walk.
And the source offers a very specific cognitive shift to help someone actually step out of that totaled car.
Really? What is it?
Well, when the protagonist is at his absolute lowest, just completely trapped in the mud, he stops comparing his painful present to his happy immediate past.
Wait, which is the exact trap everyone falls into.
Yes.
Like 6 months ago, I had the perfect job and I was so happy and now I'm miserable. It's just a recipe for endless despair.
It is. So the psychological mechanism he uses is intentional re-anchoring. Instead of looking at yesterday, he compares his current misery to his absolute rock bottom.
Okay, so a totally different benchmark.
Right. In his specific case, it's his former life as a completely isolated, hopeless shut-in.
Oh, wow. That changes the entire emotional baseline.
It really does. By forcing his brain to look at the true worst-case scenario that he already survived, he neutralizes the panic of the present moment.
Because he knows he can handle it.
Exactly. The internal dialogue shifts to, okay, my current situation is painful, but I have verifiable proof that I have survived much worse than this.
If someone listening to this right now is stuck in their own quagmire, that is an incredibly practical tool.
Huge.
Challenge the assumption that healing means going backward to how things were right before the loss. Use your own worst memory as a kind of cognitive shield.
Yeah.
By actively reminding yourself of that awful period 5 years ago that you made it through, you create forward momentum out of your past misery.
Right. You stop mourning the immediate past.
Exactly. And you start drawing confidence from your deepest resilience.
Which leads directly into the core metaphor of the entire breakdown. Because once you accept that you cannot drive the totaled car backward, how do you actually take that first step forward into a terrifying, completely unfamiliar reality?
Right. You walk covered in the mud.
Exactly. The moniker Quagmire captures this beautifully. The text notes that the protagonist was trapped in the swamp of his own depression, but the vital takeaway is that he didn't wait to wipe all the mud off.
He didn't wait to be clean.
No, he didn't wait to be perfectly clean and perfectly healed before stepping back out into the world. He chose to carry the mud with him.
Oh man, the fallacy of the perfect sunny day.
Yes.
It is such a common trap in emotional recovery. People think, I'll start applying for jobs again, or, I'll start dating again when I feel 100% completely over my grief.
Which never happens.
Right. If you wait for the day where you feel zero pain and have total motivation, you're going to be waiting forever. You have to move forward despite the uncertainty. You carry the mess. You carry the heavy, wet mud on your clothes, and you just start walking.
And the source describes this as a strategy of gradual self-reconstruction. It's not some cinematic, magical transformation where you wake up and you're just cured.
Cue the montage music, right?
Right. It's a gritty, unglamorous slog.
But, let's be realistic here. Walking covered in mud sounds very poetic and inspiring until it's a rainy Tuesday morning and you have absolutely zero motivation to get out of bed.
True.
An inspiring metaphor does not make breakfast. Practically speaking, how does someone put one foot in front of the other when their emotional tank is completely empty?
Well, this is where the survival tactics become highly, highly pragmatic. The text introduces the concept of routine acting as a breakwater against mental collapse.
A breakwater? Yeah.
Exactly. Think about why a guaranteed transaction is so incredibly vital after a major loss. We exist in a world where human relationships, corporate structures, blind luck, it's all wildly unpredictable.
Yeah, you can do everything flawlessly and still lose your job or your partner.
But physical training, or even just simple repetitive physical tasks like organizing a room or inputting data, they offer this isolated environment where effort directly equals results.
It's safe.
Yes. When your entire life feels chaotic and completely out of your control, possessing just one daily habit that provides a guaranteed return on investment is a massive psychological stabilizer.
Okay, but an autopilot only keeps the plane in the air. It prevents a crash, but it doesn't really give you a destination.
Right.
How does someone in this deep state of grief actually figure out where to go next without just waiting around for a grand epiphany from the universe?
So the source tackles the concept of purpose directly here, arguing that meaning is created through action, not discovered through inspiration.
Okay, tell me more about that.
There's a detailed section breaking down a mission called the Luster Grizzly Hunt. The protagonist has to face this massive, lethal threat. But he doesn't survive because he suddenly discovers his grand destiny or experiences, like a surge of main character inspiration.
Right.
He survives because he executes gritty, muddy preparation the day before.
He applies the 80% rule of preparation.
Yes. He studies the topographical maps, he anticipates the behavioral patterns of the threat, he visualizes the muddy terrain.
Oh.
The psychological argument the text makes is that when your life feels completely devoid of grand meaning, you manufacture a localized sense of purpose by hyper-focusing on the micro details of the immediate task in front of you.
So by mastering the tiny, seemingly insignificant details of today, you accidentally give yourself a compelling reason to wake up tomorrow.
Exactly. The action precedes the meaning. If you focus obsessively on the preparation and the logistics, a sense of purpose eventually metastasizes from that competence.
So the individual framework is set. You compare your state to rock bottom, you let routines act as an autopilot, and you focus on micro tasks to generate purpose.
Right.
But the forces make it explicitly clear that nobody rebuilds in a vacuum. Eventually, you have to navigate other human beings. And, well, human beings are complicated, messy, and unpredictable.
Very much so. The protagonist's journey involves building bonds with a new adventuring party called Counter Arrow, and the text introduces the concept of co-suffering as an accelerator for trust.
I was suffering.
Yeah, enduring severe hardship alongside someone builds a far stronger psychological bond than experiencing smooth sailing together.
So trouble stops being just a frustrating setback and transforms into an actual opportunity for team building.
Exactly. However, the text also outlines highly strategic rules for social dynamics. Because it's not just this heartwarming message about holding hands and suffering together.
Right.
There's a calculated pragmatism to how you expend your limited social energy.
Wait, I'm struggling with one of those concepts from the source.
Mm.
The dead zone. The source explicitly says that if someone puts up a wall, you should respect that dead zone and keep your distance. But if you're trying to rebuild a support system from scratch, isn't distancing yourself from difficult people just a form of giving up? Like, how is that helpful when you desperately need allies?
Well, it comes down to emotional economics.
Okay.
When you are recovering from a catastrophic loss, your emotional bandwidth is incredibly finite.
That's true.
Spending your limited energy trying to win over someone who is actively rejecting you or putting up a defensive wall is just a terrible return on investment. The dead zone is a boundary of energy conservation. You maintain a polite professional distance, and you reallocate that saved energy toward the people who are actually receptive to connection.
That makes perfect sense.
And
It's about not bankrupting your emotional reserves on a lost cause.
Exactly.
The breakdown also discusses neutralizing jealousy, which honestly blew my mind because it applies perfectly to corporate office politics.
Oh, absolutely it does.
When you do start finding success in your new path, you have to share the profits. The source uses a character named Timothy, who perfectly executes this. When the group scores a big win, he immediately distributes the wealth.
Right, and the underlying mechanism there is evolutionary psychology.
Really?
Yeah. Why does sharing profits neutralize jealousy? Because humans are biologically wired to fear resource scarcity. When you start succeeding all by yourself, you inadvertently become a threat to the group's status hierarchy and resource pool.
Oh, wow. You become the target.
You do. But the moment you distribute that success, the moment you make your victory benefit the group, you completely change your status. You go from being a threat to being a provider.
That is so smart.
The group's biological imperative suddenly shifts from wanting to tear you down to actively wanting to protect you so you can keep providing. It's a highly calculated way to engineer a safety net out of potential rivals.
So as he is walking through this mud, learning to interact with people and conserve his energy, He doesn't try to be the hero of the group. The source points out he intentionally takes the note 2 position.
Yes, and this is one of the most counterintuitive pieces of organizational wisdom in the entire breakdown.
Right, because our culture constantly glorifies the visionary leader.
Exactly. Everyone wants to be the person at the front giving the speeches.
But the text argues that acting as the no R2, the person who manages the logistics, executes the actual work, and supports the leader, provides immense operational control without the massive target on your back.
Right. The leader absorbs all the public scrutiny, the emotional blame when things go wrong, and that constant pressure to be inspiring. The number 2 operates in the shadows, quietly learning the mechanics of the system, building competence, and gaining influence without triggering anyone's defensive instincts.
Man, if you are trying to slowly build your confidence back up after a massive failure, that is the perfect strategy.
It really is.
You get the power of execution without the paralyzing pressure of being the figurehead.
Exactly.
But what happens when conflicts inevitably arise? Because even in the number 2 spot, tensions are going to flare up. The source offers 2 specific communication hacks for navigating that.
Yeah, the first is the strategic use of silence, which is so hard to do.
So hard.
When a conflict escalates or when you're unfairly challenged, the default human reaction, especially when we're feeling insecure from a recent loss, is to rapidly justify ourselves. We just want to argue to prove we are right.
We want to verbally wrestle them to the ground.
Exactly. But the text demonstrates that sometimes simply stepping back and deploying silence is far more effective.
Because you're not giving them anything to push against.
Right. By not taking the bait, you let the other person burn out their own aggressive energy. Often, in the quiet that follows, they will talk themselves into a corner and realize their own mistake without you ever having to fire a shot.
Wow.
And silence preserves the environment. It prevents you from saying something permanently damaging out of temporary anger.
The second communication insight is a severe warning against what the source calls the misaligned apology. And this one is so common.
Oh, yeah. We all do it.
When we're emotionally raw, our instinct during a confrontation is to just rapidly say, "I'm sorry," so the painful conflict will end.
The problem is that if you do not actively investigate and confirm why the person is actually angry, a blind apology does massive damage.
Right.
It proves to the other person that you do not understand them at all.
Like you say, "I'm sorry I missed the deadline," and they yell back, "I don't care about the deadline. I care that you didn't ask me for help."
Exactly. By throwing out a generic apology just to make the yelling stop, you accidentally proved you weren't listening to their actual needs.
So what's the fix?
The source advises that you must have the patience to investigate the core of the anger. You have to be willing to sit in the discomfort of the conflict long enough to understand the root cause before offering the apology.
That makes a lot of sense. And, all of these tactics, the number 2 position, the strategic silence, the careful apologies, they all tie into one overarching principle from the text. Humility as invincible armor.
Yeah.
True strength, especially when you are rebuilding your life from the ground up, is found in giving the credit to others and willingly taking the blame for yourself.
Yeah.
It's really the ultimate way to disarm potential enemies.
It is. You build immense goodwill. And ironically, people end up respecting you far more because you aren't desperately seeking their validation.
You project the quiet, unshakable confidence of someone who knows they are doing the real work. They don't need the applause. The competence is its own reward.
Exactly.
Look at the incredible journey we've mapped out in this deep dive. We've seen how experiencing a catastrophic loss, falling face first into the quagmire, does not mean your journey is over. It just means the terrain has drastically changed.
Totally.
You have to endure the terrifying process of dropping that fake, polite mask. You have to rely on the unromantic breakwater of daily routines when your emotional pilot is panicked. And you have to cognitively re-anchor your struggles to your absolute rock bottom just to find perspective.
And you have to slowly build a new self alongside the people who are actually willing to suffer with you,
Right.
while carefully managing your energy and neutralizing envy. You carry the pain, you carry the mess, and you walk forward covered in the mud.
Covered in the mud.
Because the most profound realization from the source material is that the goal of recovery is never restoration.
Wow. Say that again.
The goal of recovery is never restoration. You cannot go back. The person who eventually climbs out of the quagmire is an entirely different entity from the one who fell in.
Yeah.
The suffering, the routines, and the new bonds, they forge a completely new identity.
Loss may change the direction of your life, but it does not have to end your story. Sometimes the person you become after loss is stronger, wiser, and more capable than the person you were before.